All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me for my talk. My name is Stacey Champagne, and I am the founder and CEO of Hacker and Heels. It's my goal to revolutionize the cybersecurity industry by helping more women launch, grow, and land positions of power and influence across the field. Today, I speak from my own experience as a senior manager of global insider threat investigations at one of the big three data insight companies. Having done, and I'm still currently working in cybersecurity for almost 8 years now. But of course, what I share today does not represent my employers. If you go on LinkedIn and go figure out immediately who I work for, I'm not representing them today. I'm only here to represent myself and Hacker and Heels, and also, here thanks to the fantastic organization Secure Diversity, who provided me with this opportunity. So big thanks to them and all that they're doing for promoting gender equity in cybersecurity. So I think I have a pretty good idea as to why you all are joining me today, because you know and I know that we have a big problem. It is a $10.5 trillion problem, which is the total estimated cost of cybercrime by the year 2025. It's also a 3.4 million people problem, which is the amount of people needed to fill open cybersecurity roles worldwide. This isn't another talk about the cybersecurity talent shortage. Sometimes, honestly, it sounds like, the points don't matter, everything's made up. That's a debate for another time as to how many roles are actually out there and whatnot. But, today we're gonna talk about this guy, or maybe it's this guy we're gonna talk about. Wait, actually, it's definitely this guy. We're gonna talk about this guy. No, wait. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let me just go back a bit. We have a big problem. We have a problem that is affecting almost half of everybody at this event. When you do the math, it's actually a problem that's affecting over 2.1 million cybersecurity professionals worldwide. It's affecting people like this person, and this person, and this person. Can I let you in on a little secret? Actually, let's do this. In a minute, everyone's gonna close their eyes if they feel comfortable to do so. And on the count of 3, I want you to raise your hand. I want you to raise your hand if you've ever thought to yourself, what the heck am I doing here? And I don't mean like here right now at BSides San Francisco. I just mean like in cybersecurity, in your job, where you can do all your work perfectly and you'll still end up breached or paying a ransom, where even if you're not on call, you're basically always are, and where you're continually expected to do more and be perfect with suboptimal staff and tools. All right, so everybody, close your eyes. Ready? Close your eyes, keep them closed. I want you to raise your hand in 3, 2, 1. All right. Now, if you're raising your hand, I want you to keep it up, so keep your hands up. And then I want everybody to open their eyes and look around the room. So those of you who are raising your hands, thank you for your honesty. I hope you recognize that you're not alone. These feelings and these doubts you might have are not unique to you. And for those who didn't raise their hand, if it's not you that's potentially eyeing the exit, odds are you probably know someone who has quit cybersecurity altogether due to the burnout. And I'm gonna say, it is all because of this guy. No. These guys. Peters. Okay, so some of you all maybe have picked up with where I'm going with this. And look, it's not all Peter's fault. There's certainly more nuance that we're gonna get to, but you gotta admit, when you start to string things together, there's a compelling case that Peters do play a role. The big problem, the big P problem in cybersecurity is a little something called the Peter principle. All right, so in 1968, we have a guy, his name is Lawrence J. Peter. He published this book called The Peter Principle, which set out to answer the question, why is incompetence so maddeningly rampant and so vexingly triumphant? And the book goes on to try to explain how incompetence and its accompanying symptoms, syndromes, and remedies define the world and the work that we do within it. And this principle, which Dr. Peter alleges is based off of, quote, hundreds of cases of occupational incompetence, found that in a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence given enough time and enough levels in the hierarchy. Basically, an employee does well and they get promoted. They do the next level job well, they get promoted again, and then the next job, same thing. They keep going up and up until they're no longer at a level performing where they're deserving of a promotion. And let's be honest, they end up reaching a point where they suck at the job they're in. And now I'm positive there is at least one of you in here that is thinking to yourself, I know that person. Then you might even work for that person. And you are feeling a rush of relief because there is finally something to explain why your manager is driving you crazy. But I gotta say, when the Peter Principle was first introduced, it was never actually empirically tested with data. So it was kind of made up. At least, much later, like 50 years later, we finally, in 2018, we had Harvard Business Review, Forbes, they were both posting about a study of, over 50,000 salespeople and their managers across over 200 firms. And they did this study and they focused on sales because it's an ideal setting for testing the Peter Principle because it's so easy to identify, who are the high-performing salespeople and who are the managers. And for the salespeople, you've got their sales records. For the managers, you can measure their managerial ability by how much they help, improve the performance of their direct reports. So how much, are their people selling? And so this study sought to answer the question, do organizations really just pass over the best potential managers by promoting the best individual contributors? Now, between you and me, do we really need a study to kind of tell us what we all kind of already know? Do we? Let's just be honest. Really, what do you think? Raise your hand if you think organizations pass over the best potential managers by promoting the best individual contributors. Who thinks that? Exactly. So I'm happy to give all of you who did raise their hands the validation that, at least according to the study, they do. The study found that, first off, sales performance is highly correlated with promotion and management. So, each higher sales rank, as you go up and up, you're doing more and more, you're rising more and more as an IC, you get about 15% higher probability that you're gonna then be promoted into a sales management role. Now, the problem with this is when these high-performing individual contributors were promoted into these positions of management, the performance of the teams that they reported to declined 7.5%. So, to kind of play this out in some terminology that we're all familiar with, let's say you were like an IC level 2, and then you were promoted to a manager role, and the team that you were once part of, perhaps, that team now reports to you, and they're gonna take a performance hit. And that performance hit is even more if you were, let's say an IC level 4. If you were an even higher performing individual contributor and you were promoted to manager, bigger decline in your team's performance. And this study said that it didn't matter if these people were promoted within their own team, so someone if the previous manager left and one of the high-performing ICs took over, or if they were asked to manage an entirely different team that they never worked as part of as an IC before. And so these researchers concluded that consistent with the Peter principle, we find that promotion decisions place more weight on current performance than would be justified if firms only tried to promote the best potential managers. The most productive worker is not always the best candidate to be a manager. Yet firms are significantly more likely to promote top frontline sales workers into managerial positions. As a result, the performance of the new manager's subordinates declines relatively more after the managerial position is filled by someone who was a strong salesperson prior to promotion. The professors go on to state that these findings underscore the possibility that promoting based off of lower level job skills rather than managerial skills can be extremely costly. And this makes sense because now you have a person who has built fantastic relationships with clients. They're no longer the face of those accounts, and instead they're directing others on a team. They're trying to tell them how they did what they did, and they're having a hard time using management and leadership skills that they never previously had to demonstrate in their individual contributor roles. So Indeed's career guide has a list of these key skills for an individual contributor versus a manager. And you'll see that the individual contributor roles list things like decision-making, technical knowledge, active listening, team orientation, whereas the manager role lists project management, strategic thinking, conflict resolution, motivation. These are different skills. We know that an employee's relationship with their manager has a huge influence on workplace experiences. Take, for example, Women in Cybersecurity's 2023 State of Inclusion of Women in Cybersecurity report, which found that leadership and direct managers are the top two sources of experience of exclusion. That is, people, not policies, are the most common sources of experience of exclusion in the workplace. And then, what's a conversation without, about the state of the workplace without bringing up quiet quitting? So another study found, included almost 3,000 managers rated by over 13,000 direct reports, and found that the least effective managers have 3 to 4 times as many people who fall in that, quote, quiet quitting category compared with the most effective leaders. So 14% of their direct reports were considered quietly quitting, and only 20% were willing to give extra effort. But now you take the converse of that, and you've got, you take the managers who were the best at balancing results with relationships. They saw that 62% of their direct reports were willing to go and give that extra effort, and only 3% of them were considered quiet quitting. So Zenger and Folkman, who were the authors of this article in which this study is cited in, found that, quote, many people at some point in their career have worked for a manager that moved them towards quiet quitting. This comes from feeling undervalued and unappreciated. It's possible that the managers were biased or that they engaged in behavior that was inappropriate. Employees' lack of motivation was therefore a reaction to the actions of their manager. And most mid-level career employees have also worked for a leader for whom they've had actually a strong desire to do everything possible to accomplish goals and objectives. Occasionally working late or starting early was not resented. For this key point, the manager inspired them. Now, I'd ask how many people in here feel that their manager is an inspiration to them, but that might put anyone who's here and attending the conference with potentially their manager of their cybersecurity team in a slightly awkward spot. So I'm not gonna do that. And honestly, this isn't meant to be a talk of 20 minutes of roasting cybersecurity managers. In fact, I have a lot of empathy for Peters of the world. They're trying to get ahead, make a living just like all of us, put roofs over their head, food on the table. It's an increasingly expensive world. So I'm not going to blame Peters out there for taking the opportunity, and instead I really want to focus on the systems and beliefs that enabled Peter to get there in the first place. So, I don't have any concrete stats, but I just know from my experience, when I landed in my first management role, I didn't have any management training. Now, I'm super, vigilant in going out there and getting books and training and paying my own money and time and whatnot to build up my leadership skills, but not everybody has that intrinsic motivation or mindset or self-awareness to continue that learning and development. Not everybody can see their own opportunities for growth, adequately solicit and apply feedback for their own performance. And honestly, like most people are afraid of speaking to one another with radical candor. So, if you haven't heard the saying, Kim Scott, Apple and Google executive, which she sums it up basically as like saying what you think while also giving a damn about the person you're saying it to. And research from Gallup finds that only about 1 in 10 people possess the talent to manage, and yet we act like this is something that everyone can and should do. And so we end up with managers who are bad, who don't know they're bad, and then we have people who won't tell them that they're bad, and then even worse, the manager, has been at the company for a while, and if there's an opening at the next level, they might even just get promoted because no one knows what to do with them, right? So companies don't know how to hold managers accountable for their performance as a manager, and understandably so, right? When so many companies just don't even know how to manage and measure performance in general, and quite frankly, even if they did figure it out, I don't know if they would actually care, because let's be honest, if they actually cared, if the people in power actually cared, we would, one, have more women in positions of leadership and power, because companies with women leaders outperform companies dominated by men. And two, we'd have the ability to choose where we would like to work, as opposed to being forced back into offices 5 days a week, or any number of days higher than 0, because there's more than enough studies that show the benefits of remote work for day-to-day operations in a variety of roles, including many in cybersecurity. So we know that managers play a critical role in the workplace. We have plenty of studies and stats, but just like the companies don't want to invest in entry-level junior cybersecurity talent, neither do they want to invest in the talent that they already have. So instead, we're just going to keep repeating the mistakes of the past, stack ranking, trying to force a healthy culture by cutting the bottom 10% performers. It's just going to keep going on, and you think that meritocracy might be able to save some of this, but if you believe in meritocracy, I have a bridge to sell you, but instead of paying it on the bridge, please just go read a book. So this approach to performance management just perpetuates the need to climb up the ladder, to avoid the alligators, into higher roles, and inevitably management that just doesn't make sense for 9 out of 10 people. Now, this zero-sum, winner-takes-all, masculine, capitalistic approach, at the end of the day, just doesn't serve the vast majority of society, and so we need a new approach. For me, I would argue that it's a feminist approach, which I like Canada's description, which you can read here. Values diversity, inclusion for achieving transformative change, sustainable development, responds to lived experiences, and so forth. And so when we're not focused on forcing everyone into a single track of success, but instead finding ways for people to be successful where they are, and where they want to be based off of their own unique skills, values, and circumstances, our companies and societies will be better for it. Now, I don't have time to really get into it today, but I can tell you that there are 4 distinct profiles of people's relationships to their careers. And they're fire starters, collaborators, thrivers, and side hustlers. These are passion profiles. They were created by Rachel East and Kristen Walker. They're from Clarity on Fire. They're coaches with decades of experience. And they really focus on people's relationship in accordance with time, money, and passion. I really recommend checking them out and learning more about these. But basically, at the end of the day, we can't keep managing people like they're all the same, that they all want the same things, that they do what they want to do for the same reasons. Capitalism expects everyone to aspire to a corner office, but we're just seeing in real time that that's not sustainable. So, it brings me back to Peter. Peter's not having a good time, but like, at the end of the day, Peter has a team. And so, how could we help out? Pull in Peter's team. Peter has a collective of people who have ideas and experiences and how to accomplish the very things that they're being asked to deliver. People who, with the rare exception, generally want to do good work. They are ready, they're waiting, and they're willing to be called in, and they're actually dying to be called in because they don't want Peter to say yes to another senseless project or drive the team in the wrong direction for miles and miles because they won't stop and ask for direction. The people on Peter's team, they're the equivalent of the exasperated passenger in the movies during a family road trip. And so just getting to the point of it here, to fix the Peter principle in cybersecurity, 3 things. Recognize that not everybody wants to or should be a manager. Provide managers at all levels with greater support and accountability, and compassionately realign managers who don't meet expectations. I'd love to talk more about this with you on the side, so feel free to hit me up. And thank you so much for listening.
Amazing. Thank you, Stacey. Do we have any questions? In the back.
So this is sort of the flip side of not every good IC should be a manager, because I agree. What are things that you think should be considered both on should someone, when reflecting on their own path, should I go into management? And also, how should they identify other people and be like, hey, maybe you should go into management because you'd be good at it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really all starts with, because management inevitably involves leadership of people, usually at most places, right? You gotta have people reporting to you or whatnot. And if you are someone who, have room to grow in regards to developing empathy and trying to put yourself in other people's shoes and stuff like that, maybe maybe management isn't the right position for you, right? If you're someone who arguably has a lot going on in their life and, work is part of your life and work is paying the bills, but it's not your whole life and it's, and you have other things and other commitments and things that you're worried about, you also, when you step into a manager role, you have the lives of several other people in your hands. Let's just be honest about it. The whole reason why we all do what we do is to get a paycheck, to be able to put a roof over our heads and stuff like that. And so just as much as you need to be on with your career and making sure that, you're taking care of yourself, you're also going to have a certain responsibility to these people who report to you. And if that's not something that, sounds exciting or fulfilling for you, then don't do it, right? But the problem is we've set up, our organizations and whatnot and expectations in society and the way that we look at other people and how we talk about other people is that if you can't manage people, then you're a failure, right? If you step into that role and you realize it's not for you, you're a failure or you're doing something wrong or you're not performing as you should be. When the reality is it has nothing to do with your performance. It has everything to do with the misalignment of your values and what's important to you and where your strengths are and stuff like that. So if someone who shows deep care for other people, that's a pretty good indicator of potentially being a good candidate for management, especially if someone is good at organizing and leading and being strategic and being able to capitalize on people's strengths and whatnot, all great skills. The problem comes into play when if you're someone who just would rather you don't know how to explain things, you'd rather just jump in yourself and do it yourself and solve it yourself and not talk to anybody or anything, management might not be right for you. But again, that's okay, and we need to do more as a workplace culture to make it okay to not be a manager and still reach different levels of success and define and have more than one definition of what success is.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. Another round of applause, please.
Thank you.